Hello, my name is David Okafor, 36 years old. I live in Cleveland, Ohio, in a tiny apartment on the third floor of an old building where the stairs always creak and the hallway reeks of cigarette smoke mixed with burnt coffee. I'm a Nigerian American, the eldest son of an immigrant family from Lagos, Nigeria, who came to the U.S. in the early 1980s. My parents carried with them dreams of a better life, but life here, at least for me, has never felt like a dream. It's more like a battle, a quiet, persistent struggle I've been fighting for the past 20 years, not for myself, but for those I love. But now, as I sit down to write this story, I find myself wondering, was all that sacrifice worth it? I'm not the type to talk about myself. Honestly, if you met me in person, you'd probably think I'm a dull, reserved guy, always in a hurry, wearing a worn-out jacket and scuffed shoes. But if you took the time to listen, I'd tell you about a life without glamour or shining moments. Only long, endless days, sweat dripping on the cold warehouse floor and exhausting late nights delivering food through dark streets. That's my life, and this is how it began. I was born in Akron, Ohio, about an hour's drive from Cleveland. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Okafor, left Nigeria when my father was sponsored by a distant relative to work as a construction laborer in the U.S. My mother, a skilled seamstress back home, hoped to open a small tailoring shop here. But reality was far harsher. My father worked 14-hour days, his back hunched from carrying cement, while my mother took on odd sewing jobs for neighbors at dirt-cheap prices. They never complained, at least not in front of me, but I knew. I saw my mother's silent tears as she sewed under a dim yellow light, or my father's distant gaze out the window, as if searching for a piece of home left behind. As the eldest in Nigerian culture, I wasn't just a son, it was a responsibility. From a young age, I was taught that I had to be the family's pillar, the guide for my younger siblings, the protector of my parents' honor. "You're the firstborn son," my father would say, his voice deep and stern. "You must be strong. You cannot show weakness." I nodded, though I didn't fully grasp the weight of his words, but I tried. I always tried. We lived in a small house in Akron in a neighborhood people called the immigrant area. There you'd find African, Mexican, and Eastern European families crammed into peeling walled houses with weed-choked front yards. Life wasn't easy. I still remember the days when my mother stretched a pot of egusi soup to last a whole week, or when my father brought home a pair of worn-out shoes from the construction site telling me, "Wear these for now, they're still good." I didn't resent my parents. I knew they did everything they could. To live up to their expectations, I was a good student. I wasn't a genius, but bringing home honor roll certificates at the end of each semester was non-negotiable for me. Every night I studied under an old desk lamp while Jason, my younger brother, ran outside to play basketball with his friends. Jason, 4 years younger than me, was my opposite. If I was a tree growing in barren soil, clinging to deep roots to survive, Jason was a blade of wild grass, fast-growing, vibrant, but easily swept away by the wind. He was smart but lazy, charming but impulsive. And in my parents' eyes, Jason was always the great hope. "Jason has big ambitions," my mother would say, her voice brimming with pride, even when he dropped out of high school to chase his dreams in cryptocurrency. "He's not like you, David. You live so quietly, just working and coming home. Jason will make something of himself." Those words, I heard them often, even well into my 30s. I never argued back, I never did. But every time I heard those words, it felt like someone was squeezing my heart. I wasn't jealous of Jason, honestly. I just wanted my parents to see me just once and acknowledge what I'd done. But they didn't. Or maybe they didn't want to. I started working at 16, washing dishes at a small diner after school. Every penny I earned went to my mother to cover electricity, water, or my father's medicine for the chronic back pain he developed from years of grueling labor. When I graduated high school, I was accepted into a college in Ohio with a partial scholarship, but I didn't go. "The family needs you," my father said. And so I stayed. I took a job as a warehouse worker at a food distribution company, organizing inventory and hauling boxes during the day. The work wasn't easy, but it was steady. Each month, I gave nearly all my paycheck to my parents, keeping just enough for gas and food. By 25, I took on a second job in the evenings, delivering for a food app. I drove an old Honda Civic, crisscrossing Cleveland from 6 p.m. to midnight, sometimes until 2 a.m. Some nights I drove through pouring rain, water seeping through a broken window, soaking my shirt. Other nights, in freezing cold, I stood shivering outside customers' doors, hands trembling. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. My parents needed me. Jason needed me. And me, I no longer knew what I needed. The house in Akron where my parents and Jason lived was kept afloat by me. I paid the property taxes, fixed the leaky roof, replaced the rusted pipes. I covered electricity, water, internet, health insurance. I even paid to maintain my father's beloved 1998 Ford Taurus, which he cherished more than he did me. Every month I checked each bill to ensure nothing got cut off. Every time my parents called, I rushed over whether to change a light bulb or buy medicine. But not once did I hear a thank you. "It's your responsibility," my father would say whenever money came up. "You're the firstborn son. You take care of the family." "But I'm tired, Dad," I once wanted to say, but the words stuck in my throat. I didn't want my parents to think I was ungrateful or disloyal. I didn't want to disappoint them, so I stayed silent as I always had. My life was a loop. Wake up at 5 a.m., work at the warehouse until 4 p.m., come home, shower, eat a quick piece of bread, then drive deliveries until late. I didn't have a girlfriend, didn't go to bars, didn't hang out with friends. In my rare free moments, I read secondhand books from thrift stores or watched basketball on TV. I didn't dare dream big. I just wanted my parents to be healthy, Jason to be stable, and maybe someday to have a life of my own. But life is never that simple. Jason, my brother, was a storm that never stopped. He dropped out of school, bouncing from job to job, waiter, online sales, investing in crypto. He once racked up gambling debts and I paid them off. $5,000, nearly all my savings. "I swear, bro, this is the last time," he said, his eyes gleaming like a child's. I believed him because I wanted to, but deep down I knew he wouldn't change. My parents always defended Jason. "He's still young," my mother would say. "He needs time to find his way." Meanwhile, I, the one who never let the family go without, was seen as rigid, living a dull life. Once my mother looked at me and sighed, "David, you need to live for yourself a little. Look at Jason, he knows how to enjoy life." Enjoy life? I wanted to scream that I had no time to enjoy, that I'd spent my entire life keeping this family from falling apart. But I didn't. I just nodded, as I always did. Life went on like this until that Thanksgiving. I didn't know that dinner would change everything, that it would tear down the curtain I'd built to hide my pain. It was the moment I realized that sacrifice isn't always rewarded, and sometimes people only see you when you stop giving. That day was late November, the Cleveland air biting cold, my breath turning to mist every time I stepped out of my apartment. I drove to Akron, my old Honda Civic whining with every gear shift, as if it was just as exhausted as I was. In the trunk was a small bag of gifts I'd prepared for the family, a cheap bottle of wine, some cookies my mother liked, and a scarf I'd bought for my father, hoping he'd wear it this winter. The gifts weren't much, but I'd saved up for a month to afford them. I didn't expect my parents to be touched. I just hoped they'd see I'd tried. On the drive, I thought about Thanksgiving. For my family, it wasn't just a day for eating, it was a major event, a chance for the Nigerian community in Akron to gather, show off their achievements, and reinforce their status in each other's eyes. Every year, our house would be packed with relatives and my parents' friends, aunts, uncles, elderly folks who loved reminiscing about back in Lagos, and kids running around spilling sauce on the carpet. I didn't enjoy these gatherings. I always felt out of place, like an invisible figure in a noisy crowd. But I went anyway because it was the responsibility of the firstborn son. As I turned into the familiar neighborhood, something felt off, though I couldn't put my finger on it. I parked on the curb, turned off the engine and stepped out. Laughter and chatter spilled from the house, mingled with the rich aroma of roasted turkey and a goosey soup. I grabbed the bag of gifts, took a deep breath, and pushed the door open. "David, you're here," my mother called from the kitchen, but she didn't rush to hug me like she used to. She was busy arranging plates of food, her hair tied up, her apron stained with grease. I smiled, set the gift bag on the table, and asked, "Need any help, Mom?" No, you sit." She waved me off, her voice a bit rushed. "It's crowded today. Everyone's waiting for Jason. He's coming soon." Jason? I was surprised. Jason was rarely on time, especially for occasions like this. He'd usually have an excuse, work, traffic, or simply forgot. He actually said he's coming? My mother looked at me, her eyes sparkling with an unusual glint. "Yes. Jason said he has a big surprise. You'll see, your brother's different now." I nodded, but a twinge of unease settled in my chest. Jason and surprises were never a safe combination. I sat on the sofa next to Aunt Amara, who was gushing about her newborn grandson. I listened, but my mind wandered. I thought about the bills I'd paid last week: electricity, water, my father's medicine. I thought about last night's shift when I'd driven to the outskirts at 1 a.m., deliver food to earn an extra $8. I thought about the new shoes I'd planned to buy but didn't because fixing the plumbing at my parents' house was more important. A car horn blared outside, snapping me out of my thoughts. The house erupted. "Jason's here!" someone shouted. My mother ran to the door and my father came downstairs, leaning on his cane, his eyes shining with excitement. I stood up, curious, and followed everyone outside. Jason stepped out of a Range Rover dressed in a sharp black suit, a flashy watch glinting on his wrist. He flashed a radiant smile, his curly hair meticulously groomed. Behind him was an unfamiliar woman, blonde in a red dress, looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. I blinked, trying to process what was happening. Jason, the brother who'd once borrowed $5,000 from me to pay off gambling debts, was now standing in front of a car worth hundreds of thousands, looking like a millionaire. "Hey, family!" Jason raised his hand, his voice booming. "Your boy's back!" My mother rushed to hug him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, my son, you make me so proud." My father stepped forward, clapping Jason on the shoulder, his grin stretching ear to ear. I stood frozen at the door, feeling like an outsider. "Come inside, everyone," Jason called, leading the crowd like a king returning to his court. I followed quietly, the gift bag still forgotten on the table. At dinner, Jason was the center of attention. He bragged about his big deal, a cryptocurrency investment he'd lucked out on. "In just 1 month, I made $500,000, he boasted, raising his wine glass. The table erupted in applause and cheers. I sat silently, staring at the cold turkey on my plate. $500,000, more than I'd earned in 20 years of working, even with 2 jobs a day. "So I decided to buy this Range Rover," Jason went on, his voice brimming with excitement. "Not for me, for Mom and Dad. This is my gift of gratitude." The room exploded again. My mother sobbed, hugging Jason tightly. My father stood, his voice trembling. "Jason, you're the pride of this family. That's how a son of mine should be. Not like some people slaving away for wages with no ambition for bigger things." He turned to me, his eyes sharp as knives. "David, you should learn from your brother. Working 18 hours a day and can't even buy us something worthwhile." The table fell silent. I felt every gaze on me like needles piercing my skin. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to tell them about the bills I'd paid, the nights I stayed up delivering food, the money I'd saved to fix their house, buy their medicine, keep this family from collapsing. But I said nothing. I bowed my head, clenched my teeth, and fought back the tears threatening to spill. "David, say something." Aunt Amara spoke up gently, but I knew she was just trying to ease the tension. I looked up, forcing a weak smile. "Congrats, Jason," I said, my voice hoarse. "You did great." Jason laughed loudly, patting my shoulder like I was a kid. "Thanks, big bro. Take it slow, I'll teach you how to get rich." The table roared with laughter as if his words were a harmless joke, but to me, they were a dagger. Dinner continued, but I couldn't hear anything anymore. The laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, my mother bragging about her successful youngest son, it all blurred into a distant hum like I was underwater. I ate mechanically, chewing and swallowing without tasting. In my mind, memories flooded back, staying up until 3 a.m. to check bills, skipping new clothes to save for the family, standing in the rain waiting for customers just to earn a few extra dollars. 20 years of sacrifice, 20 years of silence. And this was my reward. A jab from my own father in front of the entire community. After dinner, everyone went outside to admire the Range Rover. Jason handed the keys to my father, who slid into the driver's seat, grinning like a child. My mother stood beside him, wiping tears. "Jason, you've made us so proud," she said. I stood at a distance, hands in my pockets, watching the scene with a heavy heart. I wasn't jealous of Jason. I was hurt. Hurt that no one saw me, that no one remembered that without me this house would have been foreclosed long ago. My parents wouldn't have medicine, and Jason wouldn't have had the chance to get rich. "David, come check out the car," Jason called, but I shook my head. "I'm tired," I said, my voice low. "I'm heading out." My mother frowned. "Leaving so soon? You're not staying the night?" "No, I have a morning shift," I lied. I couldn't stay another minute. I went back inside, grabbed the gift bag, no one had touched it, and walked to my car. No one saw me off. No one asked if I was okay. They were too busy fawning over Jason. As always. I drove away from Akron, the Range Rover's headlights still blazing in my rearview mirror, a reminder that I'd always be invisible. That night, I returned to my apartment and collapsed onto the old sofa. I didn't turn on the light, letting only the faint glow from the window spill across the cold floor. I thought about my father's words, my mother's gaze, Jason's triumphant smile. I thought about my life, a relentless string of endless days without a single thank you, without a single look of appreciation. And then, in that darkness, a thought surged up, small but fierce, like a flame bursting from smoldering ashes. I grabbed my phone and opened my banking app. My account had just a few $100s left, but it was still linked to all the family's automatic payments: electricity, water, internet, insurance, property taxes. I stared at each entry, each number I'd paid for over the past 20 years. Every figure was a drop of sweat, a stolen night's sleep, a buried dream. I clicked cancel payment, one by one. My hands trembled, my heart pounded, but I didn't stop. When I was done, I opened my messages and typed a short line to my mother. "I've done my part. From now on, I'm living for myself." I hit send, then turned off my phone. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. My mother was calling. I didn't answer. Then my father called. I still didn't pick up. I sat there in the dark, feeling as if I'd just lifted a ton of weight off my shoulders. But at the same time, I felt a sharp pain, as if I'd just destroyed something sacred with my own hands. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing or the wrong thing. I only knew I couldn't keep living like this anymore. The next morning, I woke up with an unfamiliar feeling. My phone was flooded with missed calls and messages from my mother. I skimmed through them. She accused me of being ungrateful, called me selfish, said I was betraying the family. A message from my father was curt. "I don't need your money. Jason is the son I'm proud of." I read it, gave a bitter smile, and deleted everything. I didn't respond. I didn't want to argue. I just wanted it to end. I stood in front of the mirror, looking at the 36-year-old man with graying hair and tired eyes. I asked myself, "David, what did you do wrong? Why did you have to live like a slave in exchange for their indifference?" I had no answers. But I knew that starting today, I wouldn't let anyone use my filial piety as an excuse to trample on me anymore. 3 months have passed since Thanksgiving, and for the first time in 20 years, my life has begun to show a glimmer of light. I no longer wake up with the crushing weight of the world on my chest. I no longer check my phone every hour to see if my parents need me to fix something or if Jason is texting to ask for money. I've canceled all the automatic payments for the family: Electricity, water, internet, property taxes, everything. And for the first time in my 36 years, I feel like I'm not just the firstborn son, but David Okafor, a human being. But don't get me wrong, the early days weren't easy. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart raced, thinking it was my mother calling to scold me or my father texting to berate me. I received dozens of messages from my mother, ranging from pleading to angry, then back to pleading. "David, what are you doing? You can't abandon your family like this." One message read. Another from my father, short but cutting. "Who do you think you are? Jason will take care of me. We don't need you." I read them, then deleted them. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't love them, but because I was exhausted from loving without being loved in return. I started making time for myself, something I'd never considered before. I cut back on night shifts, delivering food only 3 nights a week instead of 7. I used the money I saved to buy a new pair of shoes. Not fancy ones, just discounted running shoes, but wearing them made me feel like I deserved something. I enrolled in an online course on warehouse management, hoping for a promotion in the future. I began reading more often, no longer just old second-hand books from thrift stores, but brand new ones, crisp with the smell of fresh paper bought with my own money. For the first time, I felt like I was living, not just surviving. But there was still a void in my heart. Every night, lying on my sofa, I thought about my parents, the house in Akron, Jason. I wondered how they were doing, if they were okay. I didn't hate them, truly, I just hurt. Hurt that the 20 years I'd given meant nothing to them. I tried to push those thoughts away, but they clung to me like shadows in a nightmare. Then one day, everything changed. I was at the warehouse sorting heavy crates when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. My mother's number. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the answer button, but I let it ring. A minute later, a message popped up. "David, I need to talk, urgent. There's big trouble at home." I froze, my heart pounding. What was it? Was Dad sick? Was Jason in trouble? Or was this just a ploy to drag me back into the old cycle? I didn't respond right away. I waited until my lunch break, sitting in a corner of the warehouse, rereading the message. My mother's tone in those words wasn't angry like before. It was panicked, almost desperate. I took a deep breath and called back. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up. "David," her voice broke as if she'd been crying. "You have to come home now. We're in big trouble. Jason, he..." "What happened to Jason?" I cut in, my voice colder than I intended. She hesitated, then said, "He lost everything, David. All the money. The car's gone too. We can't pay the bills. The electricity's been cut off. I don't know what to do." I went silent, gripping the phone tightly. In my mind, I saw the sleek black Range Rover, Jason's smug smile from Thanksgiving night. "Lost everything?" I repeated, my voice flat. "What happened?" She told me, her voice trembling. It turned out Jason's big deal was just a stroke of luck. After Thanksgiving, he kept investing in cryptocurrency, but this time, luck wasn't on his side. A project he'd poured money into turned out to be a scam. Hundreds of thousands of dollars vanished overnight. To pay off debts, he sold the Range Rover, but it wasn't enough. Now he was hiding in a friend's apartment, afraid of creditors coming after him. As for my parents, they were in a financial crisis. Electricity, water, medicine, all overdue. The bank had sent warnings about unpaid property taxes. My mother sobbed over the phone, her voice choked. "David, I'm sorry, I know you're angry. But you're the firstborn son. You have to help the family." I listened, but didn't respond right away. A surge of anger rose in me, not at Jason, but at my mother's audacity. She apologized, but in her apology, I heard no gratitude, only demands. I took a breath, trying to stay calm. "Mom, I've done enough. For 20 years, I've paid for everything. I have nothing left to give. David, you can't abandon your parents like this," she nearly screamed. "You're the firstborn son. You have a responsibility." "Responsibility?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Mom, what's my responsibility? Paying bills so Jason can gamble? Fixing the house so Dad can mock me in front of everyone? I've done everything, but no one saw. No one thanked me. Now you want me to come back and keep being a slave to the family?" She went silent. I heard her sobbing, but I didn't soften. Not because I didn't love her, but because I was done loving without reciprocation. "Mom, I'm sorry," I said, my voice low. "But from now on, you and Dad have to manage. Jason, too. I can't keep sacrificing." I hung up, my heart pounding like it might burst. I sat there in the cold warehouse corner, feeling like I'd just crossed a line I never thought I would. I'd refused my family, something I'd never dared to imagine before, but at the same time I felt a strange relief, as if I'd freed myself from an invisible cage. A few days later, my father called. I knew he'd call eventually, it was only a matter of time. I answered, bracing for a fight, but his voice wasn't as angry as I expected. Instead, it carried the familiar condescension I'd grown used to. "David, come home now. We're struggling. You can't turn your back on your parents like this. You're the firstborn son. It's your duty to take care of the family." I gave a faint smile, though he couldn't see it. "Dad, what's my duty? Living my whole life to pay bills for this house while Jason squanders money and gets praised? While you mock me in front of the community, I've done enough. I have nothing left to give." "You dare talk to me like that?" he roared, his voice shaking with rage. "I raised you, fed you, sent you to school, and now you turn your back on the family? Jason may have made mistakes, but he's young. You're his older brother. You have to help him." "Not anymore, Dad," I cut in, my voice cold but calm. "No one has a duty to support someone who mocks them. I've done my part. Now you and Jason figure it out." I hung up before he could say more. My phone buzzed immediately after, but I didn't answer. I turned it off, stuffed it in my pocket, and went back to work. But in my head, my father's words echoed like a broken record. "It's your duty to take care of the family." I'd heard that phrase 1,000 times, but this time, it no longer had the power to bind me. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on my work and my new life. I started jogging in the mornings, feeling Cleveland's icy air fill my lungs. I bought a notebook and jotted down small goals. Finish the warehouse management course, save money for a trip, maybe to New York, a place I'd never visited despite living in America my whole life. I began talking more with my coworkers at the warehouse, people I'd previously only nodded to before working in silence. They were surprised to see me smile, to hear me share a funny story about a difficult delivery customer. "David, you've changed, man," a coworker named Mike said, clapping my shoulder. I smiled but didn't respond. I knew I was changing, but I also knew this journey was just beginning. And as I expected, my brief peace was soon shattered. One evening, after returning to my apartment from a night shift, exhausted and ready to collapse on the sofa, I heard urgent knocking at my door. I frowned, wondering who it could be. It was nearly 10 p.m. Neighbors rarely knocked, and I wasn't expecting anyone. The knocking grew louder, accompanied by my father's familiar angry voice. "David, open the door! I know you're in there!" My heart raced. I stood, took a deep breath, and tried to stay calm. I knew this confrontation was inevitable, but I hadn't expected it so soon. I opened the door, and there stood my father, my mother, and an old cloth bag my mother clutched tightly. My father stood tall, leaning on his cane, his eyes bloodshot as if he'd been drinking. My mother stood behind him, her eyes swollen, her hair disheveled, looking at me with a pleading expression. "David," my mother spoke first, her voice choked. "Can we come in? I need to talk to you." I nodded, though I didn't want to. "Come in," I said evenly, opening the door wider. They stepped inside, and suddenly my small apartment felt cramped, suffocating. My father didn't sit. He stood in the middle of the room, leaning on his cane, glaring at me like I was a lifelong enemy. My mother sat on the sofa, still clutching the bag as if it was the only thing keeping her calm. "David," my father began, his voice low but sharp. "Who do you think you are, turning your back on your family? You think you can cut off everything, leave your parents without electricity, water, or medicine? You're the firstborn son, David. You have a duty." I stood still, hands in my pockets, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad, I've said it before. I've done enough. For 20 years, I've paid every bill, fixed the house, bought medicine, kept this family from falling apart. But no one saw. No one thanked me. I can't keep living like that. He sneered, a cruel laugh that sent a chill down my spine. No one thanked you? You want me to kneel and thank you for doing your duty? I raised you, put you through school, and now you stand here talking to me like an ungrateful brat? I clenched my teeth, holding back the anger rising in me. Dad, I'm not ungrateful, but I'm human. I have my own life. I'm tired of living just to please you and Mom while you only care about Jason. Jason is your brother, he shouted, slamming his cane on the floor. The sound rang out sharply, making my mother flinch. He may have made mistakes, but he's young. He has big ambitions. You just slave away for wages, live a dull life, and now you turn your back on the family. You're a disgrace. His words cut like a knife, slicing deep into my heart. I'd heard them 1,000 times, but this time they didn't make me bow my head. I looked him in the eye, my voice calm but firm. Dad, if I'm a disgrace, then what have you and Mom done to acknowledge me? Have you ever thanked me for paying the property taxes to keep the house? Has Mom ever asked if I'm tired from working 2 jobs a day? No, you only see Jason, his fancy car bought with luck, and you mock me in front of everyone. I can't do it anymore. My mother burst into tears, covering her mouth, but my father didn't stop. His face flushed red, his eyes blazing as if I'd insulted our entire lineage. You dare talk to me like that? He stepped closer, pointing at my face. You think you're so great, David? You're nothing. Without me, you'd have starved in Nigeria. I stood still, my heart pounding, but I didn't back down. I was used to these words, but this time I wouldn't let them break me. Dad, if you think I'm nothing, why are you here asking for my help? If Jason's so great, why isn't he taking care of you? That was the final straw. My father roared, and before I could react, he swung his hand, slapping me so hard my head jerked to the side. The slap echoed like an explosion in the small apartment, stinging, making my ears ring. My cheek burned, but I didn't move. I stood tall, looking at him, unblinking. My mother screamed, "Oh God, don't do that!" But she didn't stand, just sat there, sobbing. I took a breath, my voice trembling but clear. Dad, if you think slapping me will make me pay the bills again, you're wrong. I'm not this family's slave. I've done enough. Now you and Mom need to leave. He froze, as if he couldn't believe what I'd said. You dare kick me out? He roared, gripping his cane tightly as if he wanted to hit me again. But I wasn't afraid. Not because I was strong, but because I was done being afraid. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. I don't want to, but I will, I said, my voice cold. My mother cried louder, standing and grabbing my arm. David, don't do this. I'm begging you. We have nothing left. Jason, he lost everything. Your father's sick. I can't afford medicine. You're my son. You can't abandon me like this. I looked at her, my heart breaking. I wanted to hug her, to tell her everything would be okay, but I knew if I did, I'd fall back into the old cage. I gently pulled her hand off, my voice low but resolute. Mom, I love you. I love Dad. But I can't keep living to fix Jason's mistakes or to please you. I've done enough. Please go. My father stared at me, his eyes bloodshot, but this time he said nothing. He turned, leaning on his cane, and walked to the door. My mother followed, still crying, but she didn't look back. As the door closed, her sobs echoed in the hallway like a sad song that never ends. I stood alone in my apartment, my cheek still burning from my father's slap. I didn't cry, but I felt a deep, aching pain as if a part of me had been torn away. I sat on the sofa, my hands trembling. I thought about my father's slap, his furious eyes, my mother's cries. I wondered what I'd done wrong, why I had to endure all this. But then I remembered Thanksgiving night, the years I lived like a shadow, unseen, unacknowledged. I knew I wasn't wrong. I was just protecting myself, something I should have done long ago. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on the sofa, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of traffic below. I thought about my parents, the house in Akron, Jason. I wondered what they'd do next, if they'd find a way through their struggles or keep blaming me. But I didn't call. I didn't text. I knew that if I went back, I'd be trapped again in the cycle of blind filial duty. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd survived a storm. I looked in the mirror, seeing the faint red mark on my cheek, but I didn't feel weak. I felt stronger than ever. I put on my jacket, grabbed my bag, and headed to work. On the way, I turned on the radio, hearing an old Bob Marley song. "No woman, no cry," the singer's voice rang out, and I smiled. No, I wouldn't cry. I would keep living for myself. The weeks that followed were the beginning of a life I'd never dared to dream of. For the first time, I didn't feel the pressure to take care of anyone but myself. I cut back on night shifts, taking only 3 delivery runs a week instead of 7, and used my free time to do things I'd missed out on for the past 20 years. I bought a new pair of running shoes, not the cheapest discounted ones, but a good, comfortable pair that let me jog miles every morning without foot pain. I started running around the park near my apartment, feeling Cleveland's icy air fill my lungs, my body alive, as if I were reclaiming pieces of myself. I also returned to books. Before, I'd only read old second-hand books from thrift stores, but now I dared to step into a large bookstore in downtown Cleveland. The smell of fresh paper, ink, and the soft lighting of the store made me feel like I was entering another world. I bought a book on time management, a Toni Morrison novel, and a guide on warehouse management skills. I read every evening, sitting on my sofa with a cup of hot tea instead of the cheap beer I used to drink. Reading didn't just relax me, it made me feel like I was growing, becoming a better version of myself. I continued my online warehouse management course. Instead of driving deliveries in the rain, I spent evenings at my computer, taking notes and doing assignments. I learned how to organize a warehouse more efficiently, use inventory management software, and lead a team. I didn't dare dream of becoming a director or anything grand, but I knew these skills could help me advance, maybe give me a chance to escape the grueling labor I'd done for the past decade. My coworkers at the warehouse started noticing the change in me. "David, you're looking brighter these days," Mike, a coworker from my shift, said during a lunch break. "You used to be like a robot, just work and go home. Now you're smiling more, even cracking jokes." I laughed, clapping his shoulder. "Yeah, Mike, I'm learning how to live. It's been a while since I've done that." But no matter how much I focused on myself, thoughts of my parents and Jason lingered in my mind. I didn't call or text, but I couldn't stop wondering about them. Was Dad getting his medicine? Was Mom still crying when she mentioned me? And Jason, what was he doing to get out of debt? I didn't hate them, but I couldn't go back. Not because I was selfish, but because I'd learned that if I didn't love myself, no one else would do it for me. One day, while I was sorting crates in the warehouse, a soft voice called from behind. "David, can you help me check this shipment?" I turned to see Isabella Johnson, the warehouse owner's daughter, standing there with a clipboard, a bright smile on her face. Isabella wasn't what I'd expected from a boss's daughter. She wasn't arrogant or flashy. At 30, with her brown hair tied up, wearing a simple white shirt and jeans, she exuded intelligence and kindness in her eyes. She often came to the warehouse to help her father, checking records or organizing tasks, and I'd spoken to her a few times, though only briefly, about work. "Sure thing," I replied, stepping over to inspect the crates. We worked together for a while, and I realized Isabella wasn't just good at her job, she was approachable. She asked about my work, how I organized the warehouse, and even complimented my attention to detail. "You're very thorough, David," she said, looking at me sincerely. "Not everyone pays attention to the little things like you do." I felt a bit shy and nodded. "Thanks. I just try to do my best." From that day on, Isabella and I started talking more. She came to the warehouse often, and each time our conversations grew longer. She told me about her college days, her dream of starting a small business, and how she loved morning runs in the park. I was surprised to find we had more in common than I'd thought. She liked reading, listening to reggae, and had also felt the pressure to please her family. "My dad wants me to take over the company," she said one day as we ate lunch together in the cafeteria. "But I just want to do what I love. Ever feel like that, David?" I nodded but didn't share much about my family. I only said, "Yeah, I get it. There are times I felt like I was living for others, not myself." Isabella looked at me, her eyes saying she understood, even if I didn't tell the whole story. "Then you have to find a way to live for yourself, David. You deserve that." One evening, Isabella invited me for coffee after work. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't used to dates. For 20 years, I hadn't had the time or mindset for romance. But Isabella's genuine warmth made it impossible to say no. We sat in a small coffee shop in downtown Cleveland, its soft yellow lights and the rich aroma of coffee enveloping us. She talked about her travels, how she'd fallen in love with jazz in New Orleans. I shared about my morning runs, the book I was reading, and for the first time I felt I could open up without fear of judgment. "David, I like how you live," Isabella said, sipping her coffee. "You don't show off, you're not fake, you're just you. That's rare." I smiled, a bit embarrassed. "I'm not anything special, Isabella. Just a warehouse guy doing some delivery on the side, trying to get by." "That's not true," she said, looking me in the eye. "You're hardworking, kind, and resilient. I see how you work, how you treat people. You're not just getting by. You're building something." Her words were like a warm breeze, soothing the scars in my heart. For the first time, I felt seen, valued. Not for what I'd done, but for who I was. We started meeting more often. Coffee dates turned into park walks, then movie nights at a small theater near my place. Isabella brought color to my life, like a light shining into corners I'd forgotten. I started smiling more, dreaming more. I thought about saving for a trip, maybe buying a small apartment, a future where I wasn't just the firstborn son of the Okafor family. But my family remained a shadow that never left. One evening, as Isabella and I were having dinner at a small restaurant, she suddenly asked, "David, have you ever thought about helping your family again? Not going back to how things were, but helping them differently." I paused, my fork hovering midair. "What do you mean?" She tilted her head, her eyes gentle but serious. "I don't know much about your family, but I'm guessing they're struggling, right? I just thought if you wanted to help, you could do it without letting them pull you back. Like sending money through someone else so they don't know it's you. That way, you help them but keep your boundaries." I fell silent, considering her words. The idea had never crossed my mind. I'd thought helping my family meant returning to being their bill-paying machine. But Isabella's way, it was different. It gave me a chance to help without sacrificing myself. "You might be right," I said quietly. "I don't want my parents to suffer, but I can't let them control me anymore." Isabella smiled, placing her hand on mine. "Do what feels right to you. Don't let yourself regret later." Her advice was like a wake-up call. A few days later, I called Aunt Amara. She was the only family member who never judged me, never asked for more than I could give. I told her about Isabella's idea and she agreed immediately. "David, you're smart," she said warmly. "I'll help you. I'll give the money to your parents, say it's from a community donor. They won't know it's you." I sent Amara a small amount. Not much, just enough to cover the electricity bill and buy Dad's medicine. I asked her to update me on my parents' situation, but to never reveal I was the one sending the money. "I understand," she said. "You're doing the right thing, David. I'm proud of you." A week later, Amara called back. She said my parents had received the money and paid the electric bill. Dad was still sick but had his medicine. Mom was still sad but wasn't crying as much. Jason, she said, was still hiding from creditors, picking up odd jobs to get by. "They don't know it's you, David," Amara said, "but I heard your mom mention you. She said she misses you." I nodded, though she couldn't see. "Thank you, Aunt," I said, my voice hoarse. I didn't know how I felt, relieved, sad, or both. but I knew I'd done the right thing. I helped them without letting them pull me back. As time passed, Isabella and I grew closer. We weren't just friends, we were part of each other's lives. I started dreaming of a future with her, one where I didn't live in the shadow of family duty. I still sent money to my parents through Aunt Amara, but I didn't let it define me. I was David Okafor, a man learning to love himself, and for the first time I felt I deserved happiness. A year later, I stood in front of a mirror, dressed in a carefully tailored black suit, my hair neatly combed, but my heart still racing like a nervous teenager. Today was my wedding day with Isabella. I could hardly believe I'd come this far. From a man who lived only to pay bills to someone about to start a new chapter of life with the woman I love. The small room in the wedding venue on the outskirts of Cleveland glowed with soft lights, the faint scent of fresh flowers in the air, and gentle music drifting from the reception hall. I looked at myself in the mirror, seeing a different David, not the sullen warehouse worker, but a confident man ready for the future. Isabella walked in, her simple yet elegant white wedding dress hugging her frame, her smile radiant like the sun. "You okay, David?" she asked, standing behind me, placing a hand on my shoulder. I turned, took her hand, and felt warmth spread through me. "Better than ever," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for being here with me." She laughed, leaning in to kiss my cheek lightly. "Don't make me cry before the ceremony, Mr. Okafor." We'd planned this wedding for 3 months. It wasn't extravagant. Isabella and I both preferred simplicity. We invited about 50 guests, mostly friends, co-workers, and Isabella's family. Her father, Mr. Johnson, who had become a respected mentor to me, promised to walk me down the aisle. Her mother, a gentle but strong woman, helped us choose flowers and the menu. They treated me like a son, something I'd never felt from my own family. But my family, they remained a void in my heart. A month ago, I sent a wedding invitation to the house in Akron. I wrote a short note inside. "I hope Mom, Dad, and Jason can come. This is the most important day of my life." I didn't expect them to show up. After the confrontation at my apartment, after my father's slap and my mother's tearful pleas a year ago, I thought they still saw me as ungrateful. I sent the invitation not to beg for forgiveness, but to close a painful chapter. I wanted them to know I was doing well, that I'd found happiness even without them. Aunt Amara was the only one who responded. She called, her voice as warm as ever. "David, I'll be there with my family. You deserve this day. I'm so proud of you." I thanked her, but didn't ask about my parents or Jason. I didn't want to hope only to be disappointed. I just wanted to focus on Isabella, our wedding, and the future ahead. The wedding day began with sweet moments. I stood at the entrance of the reception hall greeting guests. Mike and a few warehouse co-workers came, slapping my shoulder and teasing that I'd gone from a warehouse guy to a dapper groom. Mr. Johnson hugged me, saying he saw me as a son. I smiled, but inside I was so moved I nearly cried. These people, though not bound by blood, gave me a sense of belonging, something I'd searched for my entire life. When the ceremony began, I stood at the small altar adorned with white flowers, my heart pounding. The music started and Isabella walked in, arm in arm with her father. She was so beautiful I forgot to breathe. Every eye was on her, but she only looked at me, her gentle smile saying that all the hardships we'd faced were worth it. We exchanged vows, promising to stand by each other no matter what life brought. As I slipped the ring onto her finger, I felt a completeness I'd never known. "I love you," I whispered, and she replied, "I love you too." After the ceremony, the reception was warm and intimate. Guests raised glasses, laughed, and danced to cheerful music. Isabella and I cut the cake and shared our first dance under soft glowing lights. I held her, feeling her heartbeat sync with mine, and in that moment I thought my life was perfect. But then something unexpected happened. I was talking to Mr. Johnson when I saw Aunt Amara enter the reception hall, followed by her husband and 2 daughters. I smiled, walking over to hug her. "You made it. I'm so glad," I said, my heart swelling with gratitude. But as I looked over her shoulder, I froze. Behind her were my parents and Jason. They stood there, my father leaning on his cane, my mother in a traditional Nigerian green dress, and Jason in a slightly wrinkled suit, looking at me with an unreadable expression. My heart stopped. Isabella, standing beside me, squeezed my hand and whispered, "David, you okay?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I was. I stepped forward, my voice hoarse. "Dad, Mom, Jason, you came." My mother looked at me, her eyes red, but she smiled. "David, my son, I couldn't miss this day." She stepped forward, hugging me tightly, and I felt her tremble in my arms. I hugged her back, memories flooding in, of days when she cooked a goosey soup for me, when she sewed my clothes before school. But at the same time, I remembered my father's slap, my mother's pleading sobs, and I kept myself at a safe distance. My father stood still, his eyes no longer filled with the anger I'd seen the last time we met. He cleared his throat, his voice low. "David, I want to talk to you. Just for a moment." I nodded, leading my parents and Jason to a quiet corner of the hall. Isabella stayed back but gave my hand a gentle squeeze, as if to say she'd be there if I needed her. Aunt Amara followed, her eyes kind, as if to protect me from any hurt. When it was just us, my father spoke. "David," he said, his voice slightly shaky, "I was wrong. I treated you unfairly. I didn't see what you did for the family. I thought it was your duty, but I didn't consider how much you sacrificed." I looked at him, unsure how to respond. This was the first time I'd heard him admit he was wrong, the first time he spoke to me without condescension. I wanted to say something to my parents, but my throat tightened. I glanced at Jason, who had been silent the whole time. He looked different, not the impulsive, boastful brother anymore. He seemed tired, as if the past months had taught him a harsh lesson. I nodded to him, saying nothing more. Aunt Amara spoke, her voice gentle. "David, your parents aren't fools. They know where the money I gave them came from." She looked at me meaningfully. "They know you never abandoned them, even after they hurt you." I was stunned, looking at my parents. My mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. "David, you still helped us even when we didn't deserve it. You're the best son we could have." My father cleared his throat, his eyes softening. "David, I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know I'm proud of you. Not because you paid the bills, but because you're a kind, strong man." Emotions surged in me like a wave. I didn't know what to say, only nodded, my eyes stinging. Isabella stepped forward, taking my hand, and I drew strength from her. "Thank you, Mom, Dad," I said, my voice hoarse. "Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Aunt. Today is my happy day. I'm glad you're here." We returned to the reception, and the atmosphere felt warmer than ever. My parents sat with Aunt Amara, chatting with guests. Jason stood in a corner, but I saw him smile as he watched me and Isabella dance. I held her, feeling the fullness of the moment. This wasn't just my wedding day. It was the day I reclaimed my family, not one that bound me with duty, but one that valued me for who I am. That night, as the reception ended, Isabella and I sat on a bench outside, looking at the starry sky. I reflected on my life. I saw a journey full of pain, but also meaning. I'd spent 20 years as a shadow, sacrificing everything to please my family, only to realize that filial piety shouldn't be a cage. I'd learned that loving your family is important, but loving yourself is equally vital. No one has the right to demand you sacrifice your life for their approval, and no one but you can define your worth. If I could offer you one piece of advice, it would be this: love yourself before you love others. Listen to your heart, and don't be afraid to set boundaries. Family is important, but you don't have to sacrifice your life to please them. Live so that when you look in the mirror, you see someone you're proud of. Not for what you've done for others, but for living true to yourself. I'm not rich, not famous, and my life isn't glamorous. But I have Isabella, a family that has learned to value me, and most importantly, I have myself. I finally escaped the cage of blind gratitude and found my light. And I wish for you to find your bright path in this thorny life too.